to order. We have an agenda before us. Any additions, subtractions?
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Agenda is adopted.
Joe, I'm sorry. Martin says he can't hear you.
That's my fault. Martin, can you hear me now?
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry about that. All you missed was us approving the agenda.
I'm sorry, who motioned and seconded?
I did, and Drew seconded.
Thank
Yep.
you.
You'll forgive me, the mayor's report will be a little bit long this evening, but yeah, it's all right. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just going to usually rely on Dale. We had the June minutes. I get a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Any additions or edits?
Already pointed one out.
Okay. We don't have our English professor. Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes as printed, please indicate by saying aye.
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 And I will recuse myself since I was absent.
All right, now off to the mayor's report. My apologies for getting out of order. Unfortunately, I start tonight with with sad news, which I'm sure many of you have heard since then. But of course, we lost the former First Lady of Little Washington last weekend. And I thought it was important to recognize Beverly's service to our community. And certainly, I think many of us remember her wit, but certainly her generosity and for the many fundraisers and community events that she and John hosted in their tenure, both before and after their tenure. And certainly her love for this community, their love for each other was a great influence on the town, and she will be sorely missed. So, thanks for being with us tonight. Moving on to a lighter subject, I want to thank Drew Mitchell and Tyler for hosting another wonderful event at Avon Hall, rather. Thanks to the executive committee, including John Sullivan, helping put that on, and of course to the redoubtable Colonel John Bourgeois for bringing together such a wonderful group of musicians that brings the entire community together every year. I think this is easily the most well attended, at least from my observation. At least I felt like I could not have shook another hander. So another wonderful night. Maybe next year we'll finally get the fireworks coordinated, but much to the chagrin of my dog. Actually, even though it's the middle of July, to talk about the other bookend of the season, or our year here in Little Washington, we have a date for Christmas in Little Washington, which will be December 8th. The planning committee is meeting on Wednesday evening to start that process. So much more to follow as we head into the fall. Water update, unfortunately, the lab made a mistake today, so we did not get final clearance to go off boiled water, but we understand we should get results first thing in the morning, which should allow Barbara to send out a note clearing us from boiled water. While we apologize for the inconvenience over the holidays, obviously this is part of our continuing effort to make sure that we've got a reliable system and to catch up on some maintenance on various valves around town to allow us to frankly, it's a step toward being able to isolate parts of the system so that we can, when we do have an outage or a leak, we don't have to shut off the entire town to manage that. So inconvenience hopefully will pay off in the long run. We also exercised how many valves in town?
Probably about 25.
About 25 other valves to continue our march through making sure that we have maintain the system and that they're all functional. A few failed and gave us future work, but I think we're on a good track there. Contractors also started work down at the pump house today to replace some piping. This will not impact water service, but you should see a clear up of the additional minerals that are in the water as we go after they complete the work next week. So that yellowish tinge you may have seen in some water is additional magnesium, because we're bypassing the filtering system for that right now due to a leak in the system. But that'll get cleared up this week, and we'll be back on normal service. No issues with the water quality. It still meets all those standards, despite the color. How about other things around town? For those of you who, like me, find yourself going down Main Street at the wee hours of the morning often, you may have noticed in the last few weeks there are no longer delivery trucks on Main Street that often, and that's because the inn has finally opened their delivery facility out on 211. So big improvement for folks trying to get in and out of the town in the mornings, which we're very thankful for. Also talking about Main Street, I understand that amongst their many other things they did or didn't get done in Richmond in this last session, one of the things they did do was give additional leeway to municipalities to regulate speed limits within those municipalities. So I'm going to suggest that as we come back in the fall and September, we may have a discussion about what we want the speed limit on Main Street to be and on the feeder streets coming into town. They're currently set at 25, I think a limit that we all frequently see somewhat ignored. So maybe if we get them a little lower, we can actually get them down to 20. Or something more manageable as we have more pedestrians out and about. As you may have heard me mention, we are going to do the first step in the renovations to Town Hall in the next few weeks, so depending on some meeting schedules, in August we hope to get the interior cleaned up and painted before the Town Council returns in the fall. With any luck, we'll also take care of a few other odds and ends, but at least get it painted, and I don't have to stare at the crack in the ceiling anymore. So. And then in other news, I think I mentioned at the end of our June meeting, as far as an update on what the Economic Development Authority has been up to, it hasn't been up to much because I've been away. My vice chair was unavailable to bring a meeting to order, and we did not have, thanks to the summer vacation schedules, weren't able to schedule a meeting in July, but hoping to have a meeting in August. We do have an applicant for a grant from the Economic Development Authority, and we look forward to acting on that when we bring it together. We also have a vacancy or two on the board that we'll need to advertise, and hopefully I'll be out making my rounds arm twisting for board appointees in the coming weeks. And I think that is it. I know I've spoken more than enough. In the absence of our treasurer, Barbara, anything you want to mention about the finances?
Another $140,000 was moved up to the LGIP from sewer connection fees, and we were able to put $40,000 from the general fund into the LGIP.
So we're about $500,000 in our rainy day fund at this point.
Yes, I think it's like 510.
We'll be drawing down on some of that as we finish up the infrastructure to support Rush River, but certainly great progress in making sure that we've got those funds available in the long run and for the town in case of that rainy day or pandemic.
Yeah, just to clarify,
pandemic or other issues.
the 510 is just our general funds.
Yeah.
The additional 300 is the infrastructure fund.
Okay, Mr. Krem.
Thank you, Mayor. Two items to report on tonight for you. One is with regard to the commission on regarding the boundary line adjustment with the county. That meeting has been rescheduled for July 23rd at 2 p.m. I intend to appear remotely, and somebody from my office in Richmond will be there in person. That's presumably to discuss a draft report on boundary line adjustment, but I haven't seen that draft report yet. So once I get that, I will forward that to the town. The second item is with regard to the DZA terms. I see that you have a vacancy on your old business, but I just wanted to mention in that regard that the terms are supposed to be staggered, one expiring for a year, and they have not. We've had some communication with the circuit court clerk, and circuit court clerk doesn't seem to want to add our input. So it's going to be a matter that I think we'll have to bring to their attention one way or another, though.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you, sir. Let's see. Our zoning administrator is not in the office, and so I will turn it to the chair of the planning commission.
Thank you. Mayor, the planning commission didn't actually meet today because of a lack of quorum due to sickness. And I think I reported on the last time we met was right before the town council, so I think I already reported.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. ARB.
Yes, we also did not meet in June, and we are meeting next Monday. 3 applications coming up that we just received material for.
Actually, it reminds me of one thing I meant to mention when we were talking about economic development. And at the ARB's last meeting, they approved some work to be done at the packing shed
Yes.
to clean up that exterior of that structure and start the process of renovating with the new owner, Mr. Abdo. I understand from him in the fall, we should anticipate to see work both on the packing shed and on the 2 other properties that he owns on Main Street. So looking forward to seeing some progress on some long dormer buildings on Main Street as we head into the fall. Okay, we'll turn to old business. As Mr. Krem mentioned, we do have a BZA vacancy. We will hold that open until our September meeting and hopefully have someone to nominate to the circuit court to fill that position and also deal with the staggering of appointments at that time as we hold BZA. The next item is our zoning text amendment for bed and breakfast. This is the culmination of the discussion we had at the last meeting about amendments to the zoning on bed and breakfast, and this is to create a separate category of bed and breakfast which captures allowing folks to go up to a nine-room bed and breakfast operation, assuming they fall within the limits of the current structure, that they meet other requirements of the Virginia Code, and that they are zoned accordingly. I don't think there was nothing new. The text that you had before you was just a cleaned up version of what we saw last time. Any comments from I am going to open this back up for one more round of public comments. Okay. At this point, I'll open up for a public hearing and open up to public for comment.
Thank you. It's really a question for Mr. Krem. Mr. Krem, on page 2 of 3, it says, amend Article 1, blah, 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 general provisions applicable to all districts. And then it says standards for bed and breakfast type 2. But I think I was a little confused because we've said there couldn't be bed and breakfast type 2 in village residential. So I wasn't quite sure why it said applicable to all districts.
Mark, were you able to hear that? You're muted.
Question is, why does it say all the rest districts? It's not section 1.1-5, which is the standards section, and those are whatever districts they're allowed in. Those are the applicable restrictions. But I see what you're getting at. It does seem to be a bit of confusion. I think that's just because Section 1-5 is called general provisions applicable to all districts, and we're adding a subsection applicable to bed and breakfast type 2 in any district where allowed by this, which would always be village mixed use.
Okay, so will we clarify that it's just for village mixed use? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I obviously have missed something in the previous discussions. My fault. I had not fully appreciated that the proposal would allow a B&B in type 2 to not only have X number of guests, I got that, but that that facility could also serve those guests breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If I read this correctly, I may misread this, but that's what it kind of appears to me that it says, and I can look it up, that they can serve.
If permitted by a separate special use.
Yeah,
the bottom page one.
SUP.
That's an SUP. Right?
Yeah.
Much like the
But
It wouldn't be in village residential.
correct. But if they were, just help me through understanding this because I'm feeling thick. If it's a bed and breakfast in, say, mixed use, which will be allowed to go up to 18 guests, X number of rooms, et cetera, they then can also in effect become a form of a restaurant serving 3 meals a day.
No,
Now, I've lost track as to whether outside people can come to it or is it just for the guests?
this, as it reads, is for the guests, and it reads one seating to include only one breakfast, one lunch, and one dinner.
Yeah,
So-
I think I was suggesting. Breakfast,
So my
lunch, dinner.
interpretation is, it's
Either or.
one of the three, not all three or not two. So it could be a breakfast, you could serve or lunch, or,
I totally necessary.
yeah, that's my interpretation.
If that's what it is, but it does, it's not a small issue, and as one who was much involved with this issue when we first allowed Foster Harris House to expand
Right,
their meal servings, and as one who was quite in favor of it at the time.
right.
I'm now maybe saying, is that really where we're going? And does it allow people, would it allow, if you did the SUP for residential, or if it's accepted in mixed use, would it allow non-residential guests to come to that meal? That was a big issue with Foster Harris. This may be clear here, I just.
There's also, since Gene's not here, I feel a need to come in to respond to what you're saying. They're using the conjunction and instead of or.
Yeah.
So that seems to imply that all three versus
Right.
That's
one
what
or
I
the
read.
other or the third.
And I would note in the first sentence, I'm sorry, just to finish the thought, that that overnight guests or other non-overnight guests, and John, you're right. I mean, it would allow, if they had an SUP, they could serve to folks who are not guests of the bed and
Yeah.
breakfast,
Based on the agency.
based on the sentencing aspect.
So,
No, that's what I was gonna point out, but again, it goes back to, they'll have to have an SUP, and in that SUP, we can be very clear in defining what is permitted and not permitted.
Not unlike the current,
Yeah.
or the previous SUP.
so, I mean, it really is opening up the question, can you turn a B&B into a restaurant, or some version of a restaurant? And I'm just wondering if that's something that's really been focused on.
Well, I think if someone,
My absence of coming to meetings means I'm not on top of things, so I watch the videos.
That's when
I-
we decided, yes.
right,
And that would be covered by the SUP at that point. Not unlike it was previously, because I don't actually think, Martin, remind me if you, in case you have the red line version in front of you, I don't think we changed this language. I think this is a copy and paste from the previous version, this particular.
Right, I think that's unchanged.
Okay, so it would have to follow the exact same process that went through, or Foster Harris went through when they previously wanted to serve meals. So to me, it is an open they could.
Well,
If allowed by the process, they could pivot to a heavier reliance on food service than.
right, and then health department rules and codes would come into play if they're gonna try to serve multiple meals to people other than guests. Because now you're really bumping up against the fringe of being called a restaurant. So they would have to meet all the proper code and application requirements to be a restaurant. And that would be covered under the SUP. Because I think we did that with John. He was kind of on that edge there. Is it a restaurant or commercial? What are the requirements for sanitation, facilities and things like that? So I don't think we're gonna get a, sudden abundance of people saying, I'm B&B, but now I'm gonna serve 3 meals a day to people who stay overnight and don't stay overnight. I think we can control that very carefully and accurately.
Well, I just want
Yeah.
to focus
It's a
our
fair question,
attention
yeah.
on the subject.
Yeah.
Leave it at that.
Yeah, good point.
Be a short walk to dinner.
And I like to go out for dinner, so I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? I'll close the public hearing portion of this, and then I think it's time prepared to vote if there are not any other questions or concerns from that. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, that'll need all the,
Yes, sir. So I will, I move that we approve the modification to the ordinance to create a type 2 bed and breakfast following the text that has been presented to us as previously approved by the Planning Commission and as reviewed and drafted for us by our council. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. There'll be a roll call vote. Fred?
I was not at the June meeting where a lot of this discussion occurred, so I respectfully
If
will
you do, we will have to vote.
then I will vote in favor.
It's up to you. It's okay.
No, that's all right. I don't want to delay the process. And so I have had a chance to read through the material, so I will vote yes.
I vote yes.
Yes.
My response has to be long. With regard to the zoning text amendment for B&Bs, I am a member of a group affected by the transaction as a result of owning an affected business, but I am able to participate in the transaction fairly, objectively, and in the public interest. And I vote yes.
Thank you, sir. Motion is adopted. Moving on to new business, we will now have a public hearing on Black Kettle's.
Wait a minute.
Sorry.
Oh, you're going to Black Kettle.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry. Black Kettle to amend its sub and site plan just for some parking spaces, and with that, I will invite Mr. Plesko to present the changes they would like to undertake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Steve Plesko for the applicant. Pretty straightforward request. We'd like to add 7 parking spaces in the southernmost parking lot of the project. And this would be in the place where before we had the big walnut tree, which unfortunately has passed away and didn't make it. Older tree, we tried to save it, but unfortunately we were not able to. We had a certified arborist come out and examine the tree to see if there's any way we could save it. And he said best case, it might have 2 or 3 more years, and then it would have to come down, no matter what we did. So we submitted back in April. We submitted to the town an initial submission for a layout to add the additional parking spaces. At that time, Mr. Garrison asked us to get an arborist to certify the condition of the tree, which we did. We submitted that to him in May. And then we asked for a demolition request to take down the old tree, which he granted us on May 24th or May 29th. Then we submitted a formal, he came back and said he'd like to have a formal application to not only amend the site plan, but also amend our SUP plan to show the additional parking spaces. We did that. We met with him on the 24th. He gave us written comments. We resubmitted on June 28th, and that's just the synopsis of where we are today. Just for background, our project, based on the amount of residential and commercial spaces, requires a total of 74 spaces. Today, on the ground, we provide 68 spaces. We have 6 shared spaces to bring us up to the 74. And the reason, and that the SUP allowed us to have shared spaces. And the reason we have the 6 shared spaces today is there's technically 6 spaces next to the food pantry where the little service area is, and those are kind of designated for the food pantry staff. They can park their truck there at night. So we wanted to have at least 6 shared spaces so we could meet the ordinance requirement. So our request is for 7 additional spaces that we would install where the old tree canopy was, where the big walnut tree is. We also submitted a revised landscape plan for that area, and I don't have a great rendered version, but it's my crude version, probably important to Drew. We're going to install 102 plants in that area, of which 4 would be canopy trees, 9 evergreens, 3 understories, and then 86 shrubs. So trying to beat that up so we have good screening for you in that area. Happy to answer any questions. I think the other thing, help us take a little pressure off the shared spaces. The town code requires only 1 parking space per residential unit. We have 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. we're a little concerned that, we might get a little parking problem there. So, it's terrible about the tree, but in some ways, picking up 7 more spaces helps us in the residential, and based on where they're located in the southern part of the property, highly unlikely that someone in the commercial area or food pantry would want to park down there. So they really would help us serve the residential. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Appreciate the question.
No, I've been going on when that tree came down, because we have to be concerned about the water line and the roots wrapping around and everything else.
Yeah, we had the guys go out and hand dig and locate the depth of the water line before we started the demo.
Yeah.
We were worried about exactly that issue.
We need another water.
Yeah, no, we had to,
Yeah,
I had several phone calls and discussions with groundwares, so. Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing, the fact that we basically rebuilt the base of the road base at Leggett Lane from the second entrance out to the end, which was pretty good. I'm sure that was not an expense that you had anticipated.
No, not what we anticipated. Unfortunately, when the road's been there quite a while, and I think what had happened over time is it kind of got a crust on it with the stone got compacted. But then to bring it to the depth for asphalt and then stone, hindsight's 20/20. If I'd known better, I would have raised the grade on the road, and then we wouldn't have the mess. But when we cut it, we cut through the crust, and then we hit soft spots. So we basically had to rebuild the base of the road. So.
Yeah.
Shouldn't go anywhere now.
No, it looks very good. I watched the work you did to rebuild that, and I think the road will be solid. We're not going to have problems with it for years to come. Yeah, not under. Yeah, as far as the changes here, I'm fine with those. They all look good. I think the one question is going to be your landscape plan, because it's going to segue into our next discussion. Okay?
hold on to the last, I'll open up to the public for comment. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for the background, Steve. Two questions. I guess the first one was just to cast our minds back to, I guess it was 2 years ago when we had the original discussion with the Planning Commission for the project. There was a concern about the amount of asphalt there is in that space. There's already a lot of asphalt in front of the post office. And so the landscaping was super, super important. I did wonder if you had, when the tree proved non-viable, whether you thought about putting in another beautiful big tree in the space rather than going immediately to more asphalt. So that was my first question. And then the second question really is related to the view shed from Avon Cottage, Avon Hall. And now you will have 7 spaces that potentially, if people pull in, as most people don't back into spaces, if they pull in front of the car first, their lights at night will all be shining directly onto Avon Cottage. So the landscaping barrier now between, that wasn't a problem before, but now between that area and Drew's viewscape, very, very important. And I understand that you're putting in all these bushes and things. I wondered, have you thought about putting in more mature trees so Drew doesn't have to wait 3-4 years for things to grow up sufficiently?
Yeah, so to take the second question first. So again, forgive my crude plan, but all the bright pink ones are shrubs. So when a car comes and pulls in, that should help screen. The shrubs will grow relatively quickly, should get 3.5 feet, very short order. So that should help with the lights. Also, the grade in the parking lot is 2 feet, sometimes 3 feet lower than Leggett. So that should also help because it'll be at a lower level than Leggett. So I think the light shining at the cottage should be mitigated.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
as far as bigger trees are difficult. I've done bigger trees before, and they're hard. Sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't. What our landscape folks have recommended is to try and use as big as material as we can dig. Some of the trees are going to be 3.5 inch caliper that we're going to be putting in shade trees. So we're hoping more, and then some of the evergreens will be, 12 feet tall and initial install. So hopefully we're getting an instant fix for you on the screen. Then your first question about the impervious. So part of the technical review that we did with Mr. Geyerson was, yes, we're adding more asphalt. However, we had to reduce an equal amount of impervious area. We had a little bit of room left in the stormwater management vault, but not much. We had it very close. So a couple of the things that we did was there was a sidewalk on one side of the parking lot next to the retaining wall. We took that out to reduce impervious. The dumpster pad, when we got to working with the dumpster company, we had an assumption for the depth of the dumpster pad, and they said we could cut that down like 6 feet. So we took that impervious out. And then in the one corner of the parking lot, we changed the handicap detail to make it smaller. We also had conflict with the storm inlet. We were going to have to do something with anyways. And then the central spine sidewalk that runs from that southern parking lot to the northern parking lot, original design was 6 feet wide. We've reduced it to 5. So all those reductions in impervious is slightly more than the amount that we're adding. So we're netting out a little bit ahead.
And this new landscaping plan, is this more landscaping than you'd originally envisaged?
Oh, yes. Yeah, much more.
Thank you.
The other thing to keep in mind is there's a lot of utilities running through that narrow space between where the new spots are, where the water line is, where Leggett Lane is. So I want to be very careful about what you plant in terms of how deep the roots are going to start to go. Because if we have to do any service work.
I personally know that issue.
Yeah. Yes, you do. We took care of that for you. So, but yeah, and then I think to the other question, as was mentioned, when you look at the elevations, because the parking lot is fairly flat, there may be a little grade for getting water off of it, but it's not pitched, so headlights are pretty much going to be straight on. And when you look at Leggett Lane, and then the cottage is even higher yet, there's probably 4 or 5 feet by the time you get all done.
Oh, to the finished floor of the cottage, probably 5 feet.
Yeah, so there's a little chance that you're going to shine into the cottage. And I've experienced that whole issue, so I'm very sensitive to it. So.
What I was wondering is if you could test what the headlights are going to do by taking a large truck that has higher set headlights and parking it there and making sure it's not shining into Drew's house in case you need a more permanent look. I had living room headlights from the parking lot also, So I'm very sensitive to the idea of Drew's.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I think just, it would be a simple test, take a very large truck like my F-350 and park it there and just at night and see where the lights shine so that you know before this ever gets done what's going to happen and you can make adjustments as necessary.
And also the type of shrubs that you use, whether they're deciduous or what, how thick are they year round, and what kind of screening does that do? I'd be interested in. So I'd love to see the schedule, not the aerial, but the schedule. Yeah, that'd be great.
We can look at it.
I know, and by the way, my view right now is pretty awesome. I love what you guys are doing. I love the buildings as they are right now. I think they look dynamite. And that said, when this was
when Rush River was still in its conceptual phase, Jordan, the architect, came over and he and I stood at a couple key points at Avon Hall and looked at it and he said, okay, do you want to look at a parking lot, or do you want to look at houses and all of that, and we ultimately decided houses would be preferable over cars, but even with that, at the time there were lots of trees. This was, the Black Kettle Motel still hadn't been demolished, and it hadn't been, the arborists hadn't been there yet to pick out which were junk trees and which were valuable yet and all that. And so, but it was really lush and green and tall, and he assured me, he said, look, you back us, if you go to bat for us on this project and support us publicly, which I think I've done amply over the years, we will make sure that we have a sufficient row of trees screening the property. So as the project evolved, and then there were decisions on placement of utilities, how close to the road, and straight line versus curve, and all of that, and that ultimately affected the landscape plan there. And what obviously made me concerned was the amount of trees was diminishing. It seemed like with every new submission. So I just want to go back to the beginning in the spirit. Well, we had a Zoom, I think it was about a year ago, maybe it was, at this point, maybe 2 years ago. And we had talked about, you broke me the bad news that we were going to have fewer trees because of the utilities. And so I said, okay, well, then go ahead and plant them on my side of the street. If you pay for it, I will pay for the maintenance and all of that. And I thought that was a pretty good solution-oriented approach to it. So get the trees. We haven't talked since then. I haven't seen any plans or anything like that. And also, we do have some town property that's in between Rush River and Avon Hall, so I don't know if there's an opportunity to put some material there as well. But at the end of the day, I just want to make sure that I've got ample screening from my side. I think it's reasonable. It's the spirit of our original agreement. I don't care whose side of the street they're on. If they are on my side, I will make sure that I set aside ample budget for the maintenance, especially in these times of drought and whatnot. So I know trees, first-hand trees are quite costly, including the maintenance. So just want to make sure that none of that gets lost in the spirit of this. I'm looking forward to seeing the landscape plan, and also look forward to talking to you about perhaps it's a blend of an option. Maybe if you do have ample trees on Rush River side, perhaps that could be complemented with some trees on my side. And then I think ultimately that would provide a more residential feel in general, where you've got more of a tree-lined street as you're going down versus just a bare road heading to the sewer. So I think it would be a win-win-win, and like I said, more than happy to offer my side of the street for more greenery, and which I think is half the reason why a lot of us moved to this county in the first place. So anyway, that's my only comment. And great job.
And it's I'll just say for process-wise, and we've got a little out of whack this evening because of the planning commission committee. So we'll have this public comment period for the council tonight. We will not take action tonight. There will be a subsequent meeting of the planning commission to take this up, and then we'll have a joint meeting to finally approve it. Perhaps by the end of the month, we'll see how we can see if we can get a good quorum together in the middle of summer.
No, that would be appreciated, because we're making great progress in that area of the site, and we got the 2 villa buildings are up in frame, 2 of the 3 duplex buildings, the underground utilities are in, 2 of them are set up for pouring. Probably in the next week to 10 days, we hope to pour the slabs, and then we're kind of ready to do the other part. So, sorry about that.
we will try and schedule it, but I can't speak. One of my fellow commissioners is here. I can't speak for the other. I would just say, you know, I think, Steve, you're going to hear something very similar to what we just heard from Drew.
Sure.
If you want to go ahead with these parking spaces, there has to be compensatory assurances that the kind of spirit of the agreement will be kept for Avon Hall.
Yeah, and I think for Drew, to your point, I mean, let us put in the landscaping we've got planned along the project. Let's look at it. We're not going away. You know, we got phase 2 coming and some other stuff coming in. You know, let's see how it looks, and you know, we'll always work with you. So
Perfect. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Oh, and also, I'd be remiss to not thank you for cleaning up the lower lot in advance of the 4th of July concert. It looked dynamite. You did a great job, and we needed the parking, so that was really terrific. Thank you. Yeah.
And then, just because we've got the floor and we're all talking, Friday, food pantry, ribbon cutting, 10 a.m. Hopefully everybody can make it. Love to see everybody there. Everybody's invited.
If you need some overflow parking, go ahead.
I was going to do that out of the meeting.
You better reclaim your territory.
Okay, with that, any additional questions from the council? I will close the public hearing and then we will revisit this topic, perhaps as early as later this month. Moving on to the last one we have is about water restriction policy. For those of you who don't know, Rappahannock is in a drought watch as established by the DEQ for the Commonwealth. They have sort of 3 factors that they watch for to make those judgments. That's precipitation, groundwater levels, reserve levels, and then flow in local streams. The fourth flow in local streams has been low in Rappahannock County, which led to the move to that. DEQ also establishes a set, so we moved through this a little bit last year and talked about sort of following their general lead, but they do a drought watch, and then there's a drought warning, and then finally a drought emergency. In those first 2 categories, a lot of the recommendations from the Commonwealth are, advisory largely. So it's making sure the public's aware, encouraging reductions in use of water and conserving of our resources, and really beating that drum regularly to make sure that all our residents are being mindful of water use. We have mercifully never had a water issue. Even last summer we had a very tremendous leak in the system and a drought condition, but that doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. When we hit the drought emergency level, then there are, at that point, restrictions that will go into place on behalf of the town, certainly, and we can have we'll have a further discussion of the subject, but that's when things become somewhat draconian about ensuring that we can protect the water flow.
Mr. Mayor,
With that, I would open up to the council to talk about this topic. I just want to set the sort of where we are.
if I can add, we are on a well, and I talked to a very learned person who lived in Warrenton. I asked him where his water came from. He said, well, it comes from the water tank up the hill. Well, the water goes there, but where does it come from? And I think a lot of people don't realize in this community that we are on a well. And so I know that all of us have browning lawns, but I think it's really important that we suggest to our community that sprinkling lawns probably is not a good use of these limited resources at this time.
Mr. Schneider, I know. Thank you for reminding us to put it on the agenda tonight. So
Yes, and I'm going to kind of counter what you've said here, because I've gone to the NOAA website, which is drought.gov, and drilled down to Rappahannock County. And according to their site, 96.42% of Rappahannock County is in severe drought. Okay, that's not moderate, that's not maybe, that's not possible. It's severe drought. The next step is extreme drought. So based on that, my feeling, and knowing the water system and things we have, I just quickly typed up, council members hadn't seen this, but I wanted to throw this out as recommendations that we should implement now. Because even if we get the rain 2 days of rain, a week of rain, that only goes in the first few inches of the ground. And the ground, as hard as it is, a lot of it will run off. It won't even soak in. We draw from an aquifer. It takes months, if not years, for water to penetrate down into the aquifer which we draw from. So protecting the water we draw from is critical. And so there's a couple points here that Fred has made. I recommend a complete ban on watering of lawns, including newly seeded or sodded lawns. It's going to impact someone who's doing some construction. Watering of flowers, flower beds, gardens, shrubbery, fruit trees performed manually with a spray nozzle or a spray wand. No watering of gardens, flower beds using sprinklers, automatic timers, or other means, whether attended or unattended. Situations like that often end up with hoses running when they shouldn't be running. No washing of cars, houses, or other equipment. That's a very common one when you get into water restrictions, but it makes sense to look at that now. No washing of paved surfaces by hoses or pressure washing. I know before the pantry had their first day, they hooked up to the hydrant and had the fire hose running to wash down the parking lot from all the dirt and debris and such. But I'm just going to ask that, before the opening, we don't wash it down again, because that uses a tremendous amount of water. I would also say that right now, I think we should stop bulk sale of water. We have people, there's a hydrant on the driveway to the fire department, and tanker trucks come in and buy bulk loads of water. I think we should restrict that, because essentially where does that water go? It goes into people's swimming pools. Why should we be taking our water to put into somebody else's swimming pool when we need to restrict our water usage? I'd recommend that all residents and businesses consider and install water-saving devices, whether it's a faucet flow restrictor, shower heads, things like that. When you're going to run your dishwasher or your clothes washer, make sure it's a full load. Again, just saving those little bits of water, that all adds up. During the water restrictions, I would say no new lawns, no new flower beds, shrubbery, plantings, trees, because in most cases they're going to require a lot of water in order to get them established. Right now, as hot as it is, as dry as it is, it's really not a good idea. I would recommend, if you've got plans for that, push it back to the fall. Maybe we have fall rains that come through, the weather cools down. It isn't as hard on the plants, so when you water them, they can take up that water and they survive much better. And then if you are doing any watering, recommend to do it early in the morning or in the evening, not during the day, because all it's going to do is it's going to immediately evaporate. When we're running at 93 degrees, 95, 98 degrees, that water doesn't do the plants any good. It's gone before they have a chance to really absorb it. So it's best to do it early morning or late in the evening. So these are my recommendations. I just want to get them on record. I know based on drought management and everything else, there's a procedure to get these implemented, but I think if we start now and be cognizant of it and try to implement these as much as possible, it's just going to protect our water supply, because we don't have a good way of monitoring or measuring what our water supply is. I mean, we can go down the well and say, what's the water depth in the well? But we don't have a monitoring well that we can just drop into and say, hey, what is the depth inside the aquifer we're drawing from? And so as a result, when the well starts to sputter, then we know we're in deep trouble, and we don't want to get to that point. So that's my take on the water restrictions. But again, we are according to
Let me just to clarify that point. Yes, the federal standard is slightly different from the Commonwealth standard for defining this. You've got to follow the Commonwealth standard.
But,
how they come up. So I appreciate that there are different
right,
different
but-
assessments from different parts of the market.
but again, according to NOAA and everything, we are in severe drought.
I think that Brad brings up a series of guidelines that I would support as, again, they are recommendations. There's not anything that we can do based upon state law to impose these. But I think it would be helpful if we had these guidelines printed up and made available.
Can we put it on our next water bill or something?
Yeah, I was going to, you took the words right out of my mouth. I would recommend that.
I'll give this to Barbara so that she has it.
And I don't know whether that requires a motion by me or.
There are also other recommendations that we provided last year, things like turning the water off on brushing your teeth. So I can add those together for you guys to.
If you all are comfortable with it, if you submit that, we'll combine it with the previous document, work with Barbara, and then we'll send it out as an email and otherwise as recommendations for folks on how to cut back on the water. And again, we will continue to notify the population as there's a shift from the Commonwealth in that state of drought ongoing. We will not make it to a drought emergency this summer, but
The only other thing I'll add is that the Drought Management Task Force, which is the ones who set up the thing, they had a meeting on July 1. And they're the ones who proclaimed on July 7th that we are at a watch stage. They're going to meet again on July 16th, at which time they may change their assessment. So that may help understand the discrepancy between what NOAA is saying and what the Virginia Drought Management Task Force says.
Okay. Well, an interesting thing now is that if we were to go strict restrictions, we can monitor everybody's meter. So we know who's cheating.
These times that's
all right, so I'll take that easy on the big government side. Okay, I'm not going to take a vote on that. I think if the council's appropriate, we'll send out those guidelines to the community and keep the community appraised as the summer progresses. I don't have anything else on the agenda, so at this point I would open up for the public forum. Wendy.
We got a solution to the ADA, just new members. Like, we don't have enough people on the ADA to have a meeting as far as I know, and so.
We do actually, I just don't have enough in town. So I've got enough sitting members, but I'm certainly hoping that we'll get some new. Yeah, were you proposing there's somebody?
No, I think Gail actually was willing to volunteer, and I just feel like we really need to do something so that we can act on that application that's been sitting almost a year now. So I have not heard anything, so I thought I'd come here and ask.
Understood. That's it. As soon as I can get a quorum, I am as eager to act as you are. But I've got to have a quorum to appoint a new member.
I know that's the problem.
We've got to chicken and egg problem until the 1st of August, so I'm afraid. So I'm with you. I want to move as fast on that as we can. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just request that when you're doing your water restrictions that you also include, I know it might seem like a no-brainer, but the water at the base of the plant for the handheld? I know I've seen people just spraying fully early, and that makes my skin crawl.
As a master gardener.
Yes, at the base of the plant. And I've lived in drought-restricted communities all across the country, and it's really been effective to limit the time within the 2 hours in the morning or 2 hours in the evening. And then as things worsen, then it's like every other day, or sometimes we've even had different sides of the streets are loud and that sort of thing. But it's, we actually had measurable water supply, and you could see it going down. So you knew how extreme it was, but it was pretty routine every 3 summers that we've had these, and that was a really effective way of doing it. And even with town properties, we all followed the same restrictions.
Yep. Well, the other thing too is, while we have a certain number of people that are on the sewer system, the sewer plant needs a certain amount of flow through it hydraulically to run. So, it's not saying people don't shower and all that kind of thing, but, it's another thing when towns have to deal with water restrictions and things. That's another service that gets impacted.
Literal downstream impacts.
It is, yeah, because it needs a certain amount of flow to operate hydraulically. And sometimes these plants get into trouble. Actually, I've read reports where literally they go to a lake or something and bring in tankers of water just so that the sewage plant can operate properly. So we don't have that issue, and I think with the inn and everything else operating, we'll be fine. But it is, again, because of my background, it's something that I think about and it's a concern. So.
Thanks, sir.
And here the rest of us just think mundane thoughts.
Yes. Brad thinks sewage.
Other comments from the public? Yes, sir.
Piggybacking on the concert, prior to the concert, you guys hosted an ice cream social. I thought it was dynamite, and I don't know if anybody thanked you, but I thought it was great, and loved how George Washington showed up. And, miraculously, I don't know.
It happened to be in the neighborhood.
Nostalgic, yeah. Wanted to check in on his work. But no,
he did comment on how much the area has changed since he last visited as a young man, and thanked us all for flying.
It's another piece of evidence that he was here.
Yes.
Maureen Harris
and thanked us for flying his flag all over town. So, very confusing to the British. But no, thanks. I think we ended up having between around 35 or so folks who showed up for the ice cream social. It was wonderful, both from the broader county and from town. So yeah, it was a good, an afternoon well spent. I want to thank my fellow scoop mate, Drew, for helping dole it out, and Gail, she was here for, she made an emergency I was running behind and she shoveled the ice cream over while I was quickly taking a shower. So, anyway, so that's it. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other comments from the public? With that, I will close the public forum, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
I'll second it.
All in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.